The Big Orange Splat by Daniel Manus Pinkwater, read by Bits. Mr. Plumbean lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way. So did everybody else on Mr. Plumbean's street. "This is a neat street," they would say. Then one day, a seagull flew over Mr. Plumbean's house. He was carrying a can of bright orange paint. No one knows why. And he dropped the can, no one knows why, right over Mr. Plumbean's house. It made a big orange splat on Mr. Plumbean's house. "Oh, too bad," everybody said. "Mr. Plumbean will have to paint his house again." "I suppose I will," said Mr. Plumbean. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the big orange splat for a long time. Then he went about his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing that big orange splat. Someone said, "Mr. Plumbean, we wish you'd get around to painting your house." "Okay," said Mr. Plumbean. He got some blue paint and some white paint, and that night he got busy. He painted at night because it was cooler. When the paint was gone, the roof was blue, the walls were white, and the big orange splat was still there. Then he got some more paint. He got red paint, yellow paint, green paint, and purple paint. In the morning, the other people on the street came out of their houses. Their houses were all the same. But Mr. Plumbean's house was like a rainbow. It was like a jungle. It was like an explosion. There was the big orange splat, and there were little orange splats. There were stripes. There were pictures of elephants and lions and pretty girls and steam shovels. The people said, "Plumbean has popped his cork, flipped his wig, blown his stack, and dropped his stopper." They went away muttering. That day, Mr. Plumbean bought carpenter's tools. That night, he built a tower on top of his roof, and he painted a clock on the tower. The next day, the people said, "Plumbean has gushed his mush, lost his marbles, and slipped his hawser." They decided they would pretend not to notice. That very night, Mr. Plumbean got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, baobabs, thorn bushes, onions, and frangipani. In the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. When the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbean swinging in a hammock between two palm trees. They saw an alligator lying in the grass. Mr. Plumbean was drinking lemonade. "Plumbean has gone too far. This used to be a neat street. Plumbean, what have you done to your house?" the people shouted. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams," Mr. Plumbean said. The people went away. They asked the man who lived next door to Mr. Plumbean to go and have a talk with him. "Tell him that we all liked it here before he changed his house. Tell him that his house has to be the same as ours, so we can have a neat street." The man went to see Mr. Plumbean that evening. They sat under the palm trees, drinking lemonade and talking all night long. Now, early the next morning, the man went out to get lumber and rope and nails and paint. When the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to the house of Mr. Plumbean. "What have you done to your house?" they shouted at the man. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams," said the man, who had always loved ships. "He's just like Plumbean," the people said. "He's got bees in his bonnet, bats in his belfry, and knots in his noodle." Then, one by one, they went to see Mr. Plumbean late at night. They would sit under the palm trees and drink lemonade and talk about their dreams. And whenever anybody visited Mr. Plumbean's house, the very next day, that person would set about changing his own house to fit his dreams. Whenever a stranger came to the street of Mr. Plumbean and his neighbors, the stranger would say, "This is not a neat street." Then all the people would say, "Our street is us, and we are it. Our street is where we like to be, and it looks like all our dreams."
Hi grade 1-2, I hope you enjoyed the read aloud of the book The Big Orange Splot. I love the pictures in the book, super bright colours, and I also love the story, how it's really important that we're all different and we're all unique, and that's what makes us special. So we're going to be using some of those ideas today in our artwork, and you are drawing your dream house. Now this is going to take 2 lessons. The first lesson this week, you're going to do the outline. Okay, it can be in pencil first, and then you can go to something like a marker. We need a nice big bold outline. The second week we'll add colour, but I'm going to teach you that next week. So just focus on the outline today. We've got a big major rule in this one. You need to include at least 2 patterns in your artwork. So you might be thinking, Mrs. Brown, what is a pattern? So I'm going to show you what I mean. I've done a few little pattern samples here, and I'm going to walk you through them. So a pattern is a type of decoration that we put onto the page. So down here you can see we've got spots, big spots, little spots, and it creates a pattern, a decoration. Here I've done a big swirl. Here I've done wiggly lines going down, and then I've also done them across, so it's made a kind of crisscross pattern. Here I've got a wiggle and a spot combination. Down here, all I've got is a straight line going from one corner to another corner. And here I've got a nice sharp zigzag. So there's some samples of some patterns that you could use. You could also just invent your own pattern. You could do 2 patterns, you can do 5 or 10 patterns, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and show you my sample now, and then we can get started. So grade 1-2, I have finished making my dream house. I've just done the outline today. Next week we're adding colour, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about colour next week. So we're just spending time on our outline, and as you can see on my picture, I have included a number of patterns, okay? So that's what we're looking for. In this exercise, you need at least 1, but I would like to see maybe 2 different types of patterns, and they're going to be coloured in differently. I've decided to make kind of a make-believe world. I've also got a little swimming pool in here and different houses and a garden up top. I want to see your dream house. Now, it doesn't have to look like this. Maybe it could be something completely different. Down here's another one that I did, and this is a tree house, okay? So it can be anything. You've got your door here. I've got my 2 patterns, zigzag, and then I've got some wavy lines with dots. And upstairs we've got our windows. So it can be anything that you like, but it needs to be, you need to use your imagination and you have to get creative. Thanks grade 1-2. Now it's your turn to start drawing. Remember, this is a dream house that represents you, so you can make it as creative as you like. Remember, this week is just about our outline, and then next week we'll add colour together. See ya!